page. So we're going to be talking about employee engagement. Adam Owens will be presenting this, and the format will basically be he'll speak for 10, maybe up to 15 minutes, but we will have plenty of time on the end for questions and some discussion. And this webinar series, we had an episode 2 weeks ago on EQ, emotional intelligence, and we plan to have several more of these in the next several weeks. And we're going to have a virtual conference on March 8th and 9th, and I'll have more details about that after Adam speaks. Adam Owens is joining us today. His company is Clearing Culture, and Adam comes to us with over a decade of experience in people operations, all aspects. In fact, I mean, from compensation to culture to staffing and, analyzing data, just the whole gamut. So Adam is in Arlington, he's in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm thinking about my son in Arlington. So
I'm not very close by. So
I'm going to let him speak up. And so welcome, Adam Owens.
Thanks for that, Ron. I appreciate the introduction. Yeah, so as Ron mentioned, these is part of a series leading up to Talent Quest 2023. And again, we'll have another opportunity to learn more about that at the end. I do want to, and also Ron mentioned that Tom Borg, our other partner, is not here. So you'll get these slides later as well with the recording. But I do want to jump straight into a little bit more just about myself, since I haven't met many of you. I do have a background in people operations, so you see the two little people there. But I also have training in philosophy and electrical engineering. So when you put all of those things together, you might think, well, that's a really strange combination of experiences. But it works out quite well for thinking about the systems that people operate within, right? And how to effectively manage culture. You might also be thinking to yourself, why is Adam wearing those really cool sunglasses? He's inside, right? why does he need a pair of sunglasses on? So I actually have Irlen syndrome. So the glasses are not sunglasses, they are for color correction. Encourage you to look up more about that if you're not familiar with it. But getting into employee engagement, I'm sure we're all familiar with the idea of employee engagement, but I'm going to be working with a particular definition today. Employee engagement is the measure of an employee's commitment to their colleagues, job, and organization. So those are three important pillars there that we're going to come back to in a little bit. But now that we know what we're working with, let's take a look at the current state of things and where do we stand globally and in the United States in terms of employee engagement. So globally, about 15% of the workforce is actively engaged. That is a frighteningly low number. It is a bit higher in the United States. It's closer to the 30%, right? And it's fluctuated between 30 and 35% over the last decade or so. But that's a lot of lost productivity, which is the output of that commitment that I mentioned. Also, it's expensive, right? When you're losing productivity and even employees to low engagement, it can be very costly endeavor. In particular for small businesses, can cost them millions of dollars per year. So there is definitely financial incentive to spend energy, attention, and intentionality working through engagement issues and trying to improve them as much as possible. Again, as I mentioned, employees are far more likely to leave a job if they are disengaged. So for those that are highly engaged, 90% less likely to go looking for something else. It's how we keep our best talent, is by keeping them engaged. So in addition to all the normal dynamics that we would work through, there are also a few modern challenges specific to the times that we're living in. Because of COVID-19, the shift to remote and hybrid work has dramatically accelerated. Again, this is not new to 2022, but since the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of companies have been struggling to figure out how to manage their culture and keep people engaged when they can no longer, walk past each other and high five in the hallways. So this is something that some companies are doing very well and other companies are having a bit of a hard time with. Also, the long-term health impacts of COVID-19 are affecting employees' ability to be present at work. And organizations are having a hard time figuring out how to deal with this as well, right? So when people are calling in or need new accommodations, that puts a strain on the human resources function and again, limits the ability to connect with those employees. Last big concern here that I wanted to talk about was global inflation. We complain a lot about inflation in the United States at the moment, but there are definitely countries across the world that are experiencing inflation in the 200%. So, if you think 11% year over year is a lot of inflation, boy, it can definitely get much more difficult than that. And this puts pressure on that natural relationship between employee compensation and cost of living, right? When it's more expensive for your employees to live, usually that requires accompanying pay increases. But when that's changing faster than an annualized process can keep up with, you have to improvise and make some other changes more quickly. So this is just something else to consider. Now, I want to make sure other people have a chance to voice issues that they might be dealing with related to employee engagement. So I know we've got Taylor on the line here. Taylor, is there anything in particular that you are struggling with regards to employee engagement, or anyone else on the call? And feel free to share in the chat or come off mute if you like.
So we run a lawn care business in Byron Center, Michigan, and we'd like to have younger guys that are ready to earn some money in between college, in the summertime. But it's just been hard getting people in the door to show up. And I'm not sure if I'm usually pretty clear about what the job is in the interview and the process of onboarding them. But I have more than 10 people that just didn't even show up on the first day, and I was like, I don't even know how to engage more in the onboarding process where they can at least get in the door and see kind of what we do.
Got you. Yeah, that definitely makes it more difficult when people aren't sticking. And a lot of the levers that you have on engagement, which we are going to cover here in a minute, do sort of require them to show up so that you can continue working with them. So there may be some other things there related to the job market in general.
Excuse me, just before we move on, I'd like to let Taylor know he's not alone. I'm retired down here in Florida, but the lawn maintenance company has a hell of a time getting people to show up. And they're using a great deal of Hispanic labor as well. So it's not just a mindset that's college kids. I mean, we're seeing it here in a different way, but the same phenomena.
Yes, and again, just to consider, modern but durable impacts of COVID-19, the hardest hit communities were the ones who had to show up to work in person. So knowledge workers, white collar workers, a lot of them were privileged with the ability to work remotely and in a reduced exposure environment. But if you've got a job where you have to show up physically in person and you have other coworkers, then that puts you at greater risk of exposure. And there were higher infection rates in those communities, which means we're going to see higher long-term impacts. Also, that dynamic increases the desirability of remote knowledge work, right? So it's going to put some negative pressure on that labor market and kind of disincentivize people naturally to show up for physical in-person jobs. So yeah, you're definitely not alone there, Taylor. Any warehouse or function where people are showing up in person. This is even true for retail work, right? For on-site retail work. Any of those businesses have struggled to work through a lot of these issues. Okay, so now that we've outlined some of the modern challenges, let's take a look at the definition again. Now, I mentioned that it was really critical to consider all three of these contact points, right? So we've got our employee here on the left side, and the arrows indicating their commitment to their colleagues, their job, and their organization. This is great. This is the employee experience, but what does that mean for us as employers or as human resources professionals? Well, these connections go both ways, right? So it's not all up to the employee to decide whether or not they are engaged. There are some things that we can do here to help pull them in and make them feel more comfortable and included. So again, considering colleagues, job, and organization, what are our levers there? We can leverage relationships within the company, right? So how well are people getting along with each other? It's no mystery or surprise that one of the top reasons people leave jobs is due to their manager, right? So a big chunk of that is relationship with their manager. Also, employees are far more likely to be engaged and stick around if they have a best friend at work. So that might be an actual best friend, or it might just be their workplace best friend. It really doesn't matter too much, but it's helpful if they have some emotional ties to their coworkers. Total rewards, right? We're talking about, now this one might sound a little weird, right? But it's the job's commitment to the employee, right? So fair day's work for a fair day's pay, right? So total rewards, I'll cover more what the components are of this in a bit. You've probably heard of total compensation before. You may have heard of total rewards, but it is a pretty important concept to think about when we're trying to work through engagement issues. And the last one, what is the organization's commitment to the individual? Well, this is tied into all aspects of organizational culture, right? Organizational culture can seem very complicated, but there are ways to approach it that are very accessible and make it seem less complex than it actually is. So let's talk a little bit about each of these categories. What is a method or a means or an opportunity for improving relationships? I'll tell you, the short answer is that there are a lot of them. Don't limit yourself, right? There's a lot of different ways to improve relationships within your company. So I'm just going to be providing some examples for your consideration on each of these veins. And we'll go into more details in the conference that we're putting on in March. That will be an expanded version of this session, right? So here on this page, don't worry too much about the details here, but this is essentially using a behavioral model called DISC and a motivational model called 12 Driving Forces. And here I have listed the results of a team report. So we can actually take personality assessments for a team and map them together and use this to highlight where are some of the communication issues that this team might have. How do I want to distribute the work, right? So beyond even relationship issues, it starts getting into some job concerns that can be alleviated using these tools. This particular tool is from TTI Success Insights. It's an excellent tool. I've used it for nearly the last decade for exactly this, helping people work more effectively together. So total rewards, right? We're all aware of compensation and how important that is in our ability to gain and retain talent. If the pay is not right, people just won't come to work. But what a lot of people don't understand is that money is not a primary motivator for most people. There are definitely some people who are primarily motivated by earning more money, but it's far more likely to be a demotivator, right, than it is a motivator. People are keenly aware if they are not paid enough to get by or to live their preferred lifestyle, right? So more important thing than paying more than anyone else is making sure that you pay enough. Also got to consider here medical benefits. Now, this isn't applicable in all countries, but in the United States, it certainly is. Medical benefits can provide a competitive advantage on the labor market. Time off. We've got a clock up here. That's for time off. So the amount of days off that you provide people is another opportunity for you to leverage total rewards. And there are some companies who, in the competition for knowledge workers, especially programmers, they are now offering additional time off or reduced work weeks instead of increasing pay. They've kind of hit the ceiling of what they can afford to pay for software engineers. And so they're just saying, okay, well, you can do it in less time. That's absolutely an option for businesses, right? I have a ladder over here that's representing career advancement opportunities. So this is something that takes a lot of intentionality and strategic planning, but you can absolutely design all of your jobs with advancement in mind. And this will help people come to your company and stay at your company. There's a website called Glassdoor, I'm sure most of you are familiar with, where you can go in and rate businesses. And one of the more common types of comments you find on Glassdoor reviews for companies is, how are the advancement opportunities, right? Is this a job where you can grow, or is it a job where you're going to come and there's really nowhere for you to go? Sometimes you can't work around that, but when you can, I encourage you to. I put a cruise ship in here just to represent other perks, right? Experiences. So sometimes experiences are a way to leverage your talent investments beyond what compensation can do. If there's something one of your employees really cares about, odds are they would rather receive that than cash, right? It sends a more personal message. It lets them know you understand them, you know who they are, and you're trying to take care of them. So I encourage businesses to pay close attention to the perks that they're providing their employees. And the last piece here in total rewards, I have a picture of a family with a heart next to it. This is representing work-life balance. So we recently cycled through a trend called quiet quitting, right? And at its root, this was kind of a clash between hustle culture, or companies wanting employees to just work more, come in and work 60, 70-hour weeks, sometimes more than that, with a Generation Z trend of wanting to have really well-defined boundaries between work and home life. So again, this is something that you can consider a competitive advantage. Much like I was talking about earlier with software engineers, if you've got a really good reputation for maintaining work-life balance at your workplace, the word will spread, message will get out. And if the pay is the same at another place where someone is working 70 hours, but they're only working 40 hours at your location, it's not hard for them to do that math, right? They can do that math pretty quickly and easily. So something to consider. It's another opportunity. So that was total rewards, more than just compensation. I also wanted to talk just a little bit about organizational culture. As I mentioned, culture is one of those things that often goes on the back burner, either because Hopefully people know it's important and think it's important. Sometimes they don't, but more often than not, it's because they don't know where to start with organizational culture. I will just say every culture, every company, every organization has a culture, right? So you have one, whether you're managing it or not is up to you. It can be proactively managed in an organized way. So I've got a picture of this Denison culture survey here. This is just a sample from a company, but you can see Denison has broken this down into several distinct categories. And this particular tool is applied as a 48-question survey that goes out to employees. So it's pretty quick to administer, it's pretty quick to get results back, and it leaves you with a clear path forward on how to improve your culture and strengthen it along all of these different areas. All right, so talked a lot about the different areas of engagement. We've seen a couple of different tools that are options for how to manage it. But there is an elephant in the room that we haven't talked about yet. And this is toxic workplace issues, right? So you might be thinking to yourself, Adam, this is all great, but my manager is terrible, right? How does this help me? The short answer there is that it doesn't, right? If you've got toxic dynamics in your workplace, they are going to undermine all of your positive initiatives. So it's important to have tools in place to manage toxicity in your workplace. We don't have time to get into them today. I wish we did. But just so you're aware, yes, you're right. Toxicity does matter. It is something that you have to talk about with regards to engagement. And it's something, again, that we're going to dig into further during the March web conference. The other thing I just wanted to let people know who are on the call is that we have another colleague named Robert Sikora. He runs Sikora Consulting, and he has an assessment that directly addresses the subject of engagement. So some of the other assessments that I've showed you really focus on pieces of the engagement puzzle. This one is a holistic model just for engagement. And they're providing free reports to individuals and organizations through the end of 2022. So if you want more information about how to get that data back, how to obtain those reports and how to work with them, feel free to reach out to myself or Ron or Tom Borg if you're more comfortable with him. All of our contact information is in the back of this slide deck. So just reach out to us. We can help get you set up and work through the results. But this is a quick hit for those people who want to something fast. And that's it. That's what I've got to share with you for engagement today. So I'll hand it back over to Ron.
Great. So I'm unmuted. Yeah, good. I wanted to just put into the chat here some details so that we've mentioned a few times about Talent Quest 2023. It's a one-day web or virtual conference that's going to be spread over 2 days. So it's 2 half days on March 8th and 9th, 2023. And in the comments, you can see a link that will take you to a page where you can get more info and register if you're interested in that, save your place, and put it in your calendar. So Adam also has a link to this on this slide, so you can check both of those places. We have time for just a few questions, and I wanted to start. Angela, you had a question about, I think, one of the early slides and the stat. So do you want to ask your question? You're on mute.
Zipia. So I think I sent a question to you And I was curious, Adam, was this
Mhm.
15% low engagement, is it do with blue collar, professional, or a mixture? And I've never heard of Zipia, so could you give some information about what that company does? Which I believe you probably have a lot of expert knowledge on. Pull off that
Yeah.
data.
Yeah, so this particular article that I referenced from Zipia was itself a compilation of statistics from a variety of sources. So if you want to know more about the particular statistics that were used, she goes into more detail and also provides direct sources to the original studies that were run.
Okay.
So
yeah, that helps. Sometimes, data, it's like, I always like to know how is this data compiled? So I'm that kind of person. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and a lot of the studies in these categories are focused primarily in the United States. So I tried to pull in some global workforce statistics, but they're just a heads up, they're going to vary broadly, even from city to city. So even if you're looking at statistics for the United States, it really depends on where in the United States. Same for any country.
I'm not familiar with Zipia. Why did you choose Zipia as the source of your information?
Yeah, I chose Zipia as the source because she was well sourced, the particular journalist who wrote this article, and they were the most relevant to the topic, right?
The other two things I love was the Denison. I enjoyed that particular part of the presentation about Denison, and as well as total rewards. I love that one. So that's my takeaway. Thank you, Adam. The total rewards. That's like, oh yeah, more time off. Yes, if I could get, the work done half the time. I'm all about productivity. So, no point just clocking in the hours. And then, so really wonderful share there. Thank you.
So Adam, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Let's, if a company is having engagement issues and they came to you asking for some help, but let's assume that I think, the best practice for a consultant is you would want to do something like a Denison or 8 factors of engagement, some sort of a survey tool, and collect some information, some data before you prescribe, before you give any advice. Let's assume, though, you're not being engaged yet, or brought in to do that level of fact finding. Let's assume you're just having a conversation with a business owner, and they are just kind of asking you for off the cuff type things, and they said, if you could just give me one piece of advice or one tool, that's probably going to help me have some initial quick wins or quick hits on employee engagement to improve our engagement. Is there one place that you kind of reach in your toolbox more frequently than others and use, or you suggest to people? Is there something that fits that bill?
Absolutely. So I think the most critical piece of employee engagement is to engage your employees. So regardless of what particular survey you use, do something, right? Ask your employees how they like working at your company and why. Even just that one simple question, why do you like working here, goes a long way. It lets people know that you care about their experience, and it also gives you information that you can share with new hires. So Taylor, I know you mentioned that you've had trouble with people sticking once they're made offers, right? You really want to be able to communicate to people before they start what the benefits are of working at your company, whether those are financial or intrinsic, right? Maybe people really love working at your company because they all go hang out together at lunchtime and they like the conversation. Let people know before they start, hey, you're going to have some really good discussions with people, right, over your lunches if you come and work here. It seems simple, but it is important, right? So that's awesome. That's the one tool I would recommend everybody use, and then you can build up from there to all this other stuff.
I love that. So Adam mentioned also that with one of the best questions you could ask is, whether people have a best friend at work. That's one of the 12 questions that Gallup has been asking for decades now, and it's quite, well known in the world. So the 12 questions of Gallup is really useful, but I think probably that one nugget that Adam just mentioned about engage with your employees, it sounds so obvious. So, kind of like, well, why do we even need to say that? But it is shocking to know how seldom companies miss that opportunity to just ask, to have the informal conversation and to talk with employees, not to them, but talk with them and to listen and actually find out, why do you work here? What do you like about it? And, what keeps you coming to work? And to hear the good, the bad, and the otherwise. So thanks for that, Adam. And we're out of time now. There's some great things that have been shared here. You'll get a much more expanded look at this, a deep dive, if you will, into employee engagement at Talent Quest in March. And you're free to reach out and engage with Adam offline after we're done here. If you're listening to this on replay, encourage you to connect with Adam on LinkedIn or reach out to him. And we're just excited to have these resources available to people. And Adam, thanks for doing a great job for us today.
Thank you very much, Ron. And
All right.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see y'all at Talent Quest in March.
Very good.